Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to Book Trek 2023, the Summer of Trek. This is a BookTube event created by Vin at Revenant Reads a couple of years ago. We are now on our third year, I think, doing Book Trek, and we're sprawling over the whole summer reading Star Trek fiction. If you do that, if you read even one Star Trek novel this summer, you have participated enthusiastically in Book Trek. I am reading more than one book this summer. I'm reading a Star Trek book so far, just adding a new one every night to my reading roster. I don't know that I'll keep up that pace, but for now I am, especially with today's book, because today's book is a buddy read that I'm doing with Randy Ray, the literate Texan. I'll leave a link to his video down below. We're reading through the Star Trek novels of Sandra Marshak and Myrna Culbreth, which are from early on in the Star Trek years of fiction. They don't do them anymore. They stopped doing them. So there's only a handful. There are only 4 novels and then a couple of short stories and anthologies that they helped to edit and largely helped to write. And I love these things. They are deep favorites of mine. But they are also an object lesson in how something can be a favorite of yours without being any good. And nothing brings that really to the fore more than to read them with someone else in mind. Doing a buddy read with someone else really makes you think. Today we are doing the Prometheus design, which is look at that old Timescape banner. You sci-fi fans, or sorry, SF fans, you science fiction fans will love seeing that Timescape banner. That meant some good reading. Almost always that meant some good reading. And this is an early Star Trek novel, very, very early, 5 or 6 in the run of numbered novels, in which the Enterprise, it starts off with the Enterprise on the planet Helva, where the natives have great big devil horns. And something seems to be mucking around with their aggression levels. And also abducting them, UFO style. The natives have many, many different reports about something being very wrong. And something indefinable. This is not like, there's a Klingon who's infiltrated and is passing out weapons to people or something like that. This is something deeper than that. So Kirk and crew go to investigate. And quickly start to experience these things themselves. In addition to heightened levels of insecurity, of violence, of anger, of whatnot, they also start to experience lost time. Which is another thing the natives have been recording. Where they can't account, like the UFO abduction stories of the 1970s, they can't account for all of their time. And this prompts the Federation to send a 100-year-old Vulcan named Savage to the Enterprise. He is a legend. He has been everything. He has done everything. These two writers have a penchant for hyperbole, and they ladle it out on Savage. He has been the greatest captain, the greatest admiral, the greatest explorer, the greatest diplomat, the greatest scientist. He's just the bee's knees. And he comes to the Enterprise not necessarily to take command, but he does want to wrest command from Captain Kirk. Captain Kirk is a mere human. And as I mentioned with The Price of the Phoenix and The Fate of the Phoenix, Sandra Marshak and Myrna Culbreth picture Vulcans as super beings. Not just 3 times stronger than a human being, but 100 times stronger than a human being. And not just strength either. They have super hearing, super vision, they can see at night, they have super speed, super reflexes, they are better poised, they are better. It's not just that they tamp down their emotions, that they're just completely superior beings. So much superior to humans, as is stated a number of times in this book, without much pushback from either Dr. McCoy or Captain Kirk. So much superior to humans that really it's kind of a petting situation. Unbelievable. Just unbelievable. Even though I love these novels, even when I read this the first time, I was thinking, oh, come on. Best thing that would happen in this book is for Kursk to haul off and punch Savage. But you get the impression from reading this novel that if he did that, he would break his hand. That Savage is actually Kryptonian-style invulnerable to harm or whatnot. It isn't completely that bad because the Spock and Savage do have their share of troubles, physical challenges in the course of the book. But Savage doesn't want to take command of the Enterprise. He will if he has to, but what he wants is to hand command over to a superior being, that being Mr. Spock, who takes command of the Enterprise as captain and it starts calling Jim Kirk Mr. Kirk. And it's all really well done. It's all really exciting in the way that these two authors do these two authors, believe it or not, despite the impression I'm giving, they really know their Star Trek. Book and chapter. So you get that feeling. This book is actually footnoted. So you get that feeling that this is done by Star Trek fans for Star Trek fans. Unfortunately, it's for Star Trek fans who loved Star Trek fanzines. Modern day Star Trek readers of modern day Star Trek fiction would not know what they were dealing with in this book. And the goal of Savage's mission is to figure out what is mucking around with these things. It seems to be happening all throughout the galaxy. So, like, someone is mucking around with aggression levels in order to figure out what these flesh and blood terrestrial beings will do. Obviously, if you're going to muck around with these things, you yourself are probably not a flesh and blood terrestrial being. And that's a group of people called the designers, and they get center stage as the book goes on. They actually open the book, but they get center stage as the book goes on, as our crew gets closer and closer to figuring out not only who they are and how they work, but also another penchant of these two authors, also grappling with the philosophy of aggression. What has allowed humanity to survive its own aggressive impulses? What allowed Vulcan to do that 1,000 years ago? What allows humans to develop atomic weapons and then worse than atomic weapons and yet not wipe themselves out and not wipe anybody else out? The phrase that we get to over and over again in this book is, "I shall not kill today." I can't change my nature, but I can say I will not kill today. And that ends up being fairly satisfying. The book ends up having a fairly satisfying plot development. It's just that weird, again, very sexual, complete superiority of the Vulcans in every way over the humans around them that gets... I don't know, I noticed it this time more. I think because I had another set of eyes reading the book with me. There's one point in the book where Savage and Spock and McCoy and Kirk... Very, very nice to have more McCoy in this book. He's barely in the Phoenix books, but he's a major character in the Prometheus design. And it's good to see. Our authors do McCoy really well. But at one point, the four of them are hiking. They're out in the wilderness. And when it comes time for them to set up camp for the night, of course they've got Trek technology, so they can set up a force field around their camp. They don't have to worry about animals or predators or anything like that. But they do want to set up a campfire for the night. And at one point in this scene, I'm going to read you a bit from the scene. I've got it right here. Savage knows that they need firewood for the night, and he comes into the campfire, carrying a tree trunk on his shoulder, effortlessly, that must weigh 1,000 pounds. And Kirk and McCoy just marvel at it. Well, that's... Vulcans are a little bit stronger than humans. They're not super beings. And for it to be done so casually, the idea being that Spock could easily do this and doesn't, that he restrains himself, which is a point that Savage makes over and over again, that Spock is just limiting himself by being around these weakling humans. It's a point that is hammered a little too consistently in this book. But the aspect of it that bothers me is the petting thing. That the difference between a Vulcan and a human is the difference between a human and a gerbil is too much. That is a fan fiction too far. That is T-negative too far. And for Kirk, especially, to be just so okay with it is... I want to read you. I'll read you a scene here where they're at their campfire. Kirk is saying, "We humans are something of a trial for you, but we call forth your natural capacities in ways that must be satisfying." The natural capacities to care, to pet, to shepherd and protect. Savage appeared to consult some inner calculator. I would not designate the state as an emotion, but there is a certain pleasurable release of capacity. He lowered a frown on Kirk's smile, as well as a severe and frequent irritation. Pleasure is an emotion. Okay, but anyway. Kirk stretched out on an elbow on one of the forced down sleeping bags. I don't doubt it. The gulf between Vulcan and human is very narrow, but it is very deep. He looked at Spock. I know you, Spock, as I know no one else in the galaxy. The half of you is flesh of my flesh, kind of my kind, as human as I am. And yet somewhere at the bottom of that gulf remains a mystery. I know what Sandra Mauschek and Myrna Culbreth are saying in that passage and passages like it. Who better than I to know? But flesh of my flesh has only one connotation. I know that in that scene they're meaning Kirk to say that half of you is human, and I'm human. But flesh of my flesh means only one thing, and it's unmissable in this book, which has really good philosophic considerations and a really good climax. No pun intended. It's not that kind of climax, but it might as well be. I had a blast reading this. This is the first time that I've actually read this book from front to back as an ebook. And Randy and I are not done. Sandra Marchek and Myrna Culbreth are not done. They have one other Star Trek novel, which is Triangle. What would happen if Kirk and Spock fell in love with the same woman? And we will get. I think Randy's making his video on that today, or maybe tomorrow. So we'll get to that. I'm perfectly happy to put aside any other Trek reading as long as I've got buddy readings to do. But maybe I can convince him to read the Sandra Marchek and Myrna Culbreth anthologies, The New Voyages and The New Voyages 2. Maybe I can convince him to do that if he likes these two authors. But anyway, that's my Star Trek for today. It's the Prometheus design. I don't know that I will reread the Prometheus design again anytime soon. I've read it probably 100 times, so probably that's enough. But this was fun to do, so I'll wrap this up, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.